Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
This leads to Cramer's rule for solving linear equations, which you have seen for a 2 by 2 or 3 by 3 system of linear equations. If you have as many equations as number of variables using Cramer's rule, you can solve if determinant is not equal to 0. So let us do it for a system of n equations in n unknowns. We have in a general system of n equations in n unknowns. So I have displayed the coefficient matrix here, and x1 up to xn are the unknowns, and b1 up to bn are known quantities. We want to solve xi. Okay. Of course, we know the Gauss elimination method to solve xi using row operations, but sometimes we need a compact formula for xi. Yeah, there are situations where we need a very compact formula for xi, and Cramer's rule gives this compact formula for xi. Okay. So suppose the matrix is invertible. This applies when the matrix is invertible. Because if the matrix is not invertible, then the row canonical form will have a 0 row, and therefore there is at least one free variable. Once there is one free variable, then there are infinitely many solutions. Okay, so we cannot have a formula. So we assume that the matrix is invertible, and that ensures that xi's are uniquely determined. Yeah. So ax equal to b, and a is invertible, then x is equal to a inverse b. And we know how to calculate a inverse by Gauss elimination method or the formula using cofactors, etc. Yeah. So let Cj be the matrix obtained from A by replacing jth column of A by B. Yeah. So A is this. So look at, take the jth column of A and replace it by B. Yeah. Replace this column by B. I get a new matrix, and that is the matrix Cj. So Cj is, just I repeat, Cj is same as A, but in the jth column, I am putting B. This is jth column. That is the matrix Cj. Okay. Then Cramer's rule says that xj is equal to determinant of Cj divided by determinant of A. It's a very neat formula. Yeah, very neat formula. Given the coefficient matrix, when the coefficient matrix is invertible, I replace the jth column by the vector b. B is the b are known quantities. Okay, so replace the jth column by the vector b. I get this matrix Cj. Then find its determinant. Find determinant of A. Then xj is determinant of Cj over. Okay, let's prove this. So suppose A1 up to An are columns of A. Then we write Ax. Okay, this is a very important way of understanding Ax. We have Ax equal to B, but Ax can be thought of as a linear combination of column vectors x1 A1 plus x2 A2, etc. So Ax, there are two ways of understanding Ax. Right? How do we multiply A with a column vector? Well, the first component of Ax, which is B1, will be take the first row of A and take the dot product with x. The second component of B will be second row of A, take the dot product with x, and so on. That is one way of understanding Ax equal to B. Another way of understanding is that Ax is actually a linear combination of its column vector, and the coefficients are the unknown quantities x1, x2, xn, and this is equal to the vector B. Okay, so B is equal to this. Okay, so therefore, when I say replace A1 by the vector B, yeah, A1 by the vector B, I get determinant of x1 A1 plus xn an, and then A2, etc. Okay, so now by multilinearity, okay, I can open this. But after you apply multilinearity, then if only term which will survive is determinant of x1 A1, x A2 an. The other terms will become 0 because the terms, I mean, you will encounter matrices which have two identical columns, right? Okay. So I get determinant of x1, a1, a2, an, and again by multilinearity, this is x1 times determinant of a. This is my matrix C1. So that shows that xj, if I do it for x, this will say that x1 is equal to determinant of C1 over determinant of A. And same argument will show me that xj is determinant of Cj over determinant of A. Okay, so this is the compact Cramer's rule. But you see, there are too many computations involved. Determinant of Cj has n factorial terms, determinant of A has n factorial terms. So we have to do n factorial times 2 computation for each variable, right? And then there are n variables. So 2n times n factorial computations we have to do. This is very expensive. This is very expensive process to find out xj. And in comparison to this, the Gauss elimination method is far more efficient. But these are formulas for theoretical purposes. Yeah, the formula for determinant in terms of cofactors, then the formula for xj in terms of determinants in Cramer's rule, they have theoretical usefulness. Yeah, similarly, computing determinant by rows or columns, fixing the rows or columns, that's how we are trained in high school to calculate. But then now you know that the Gauss-Jordan method is much more efficient. You can do a analysis of number of computations and see yourself that the Gauss-Jordan method is far more efficient than using the formulas for determinant. Okay, so that is the end of our brief introduction to determinants. We have proved some fundamental properties. Yeah? Determinant of product of two matrices is a product of determinants. We have proved determinant of a matrix is determinant of its transpose. We have used the cofactor matrix to find the inverse. We have also derived a criterion for invertibility of matrices, that a matrix is invertible if and only if determinant is non-zero. Okay, and the formula for determinant in terms of Gauss elimination method, in terms of multipliers and the number of row exchanges. So these are the basic things. And we our approach was through axiomatic method. We derived formulas for determinant. We did not say determinant of a matrix is this. Yeah? We have derived the formulas that you know for determinant using the three axioms. The three axioms are alternating property, which says that if two column vectors of a matrix are equal, then the matrix has zero determinant. Then multilinear property and the normalization property, that determinant of the identity matrix is 1. Okay. So this is a new approach to determinant. It is conceptually easy to understand. So please read this section and try the problems in the second tutorial. I will soon post the second tutorial on determinants and vector spaces. So I now start a new topic of vector spaces. Okay, so let's begin a new chapter on vector spaces. Okay, this is so far we were dealing with matrices and the row vectors and column vectors and doing some hand computation and Gauss elimination. These are computational methods, but now we rise to a new level. It is a abstract level. Okay, it is an abstract level, but to understand all the nitty-gritties of solving linear equations, we need to understand the totality of all vectors. Rather than just do computations with a bunch of vectors, we have to understand the space in which all the vectors live. Okay? What are the algebraic properties of that space? What are the geometric properties of that space? And understanding the space of all solutions of a system of homogeneous linear equations or the space of all vectors, yeah, it gives better insight into solutions of a given system of linear equations. So our ultimate purpose in linear algebra is to solve system of linear equations. All the problems which deal with applications, they give rise to non-linear equations many times, very often. but these non-linear equations are converted into linear equations. We just look at the linear part. And for many applications, just the linear parts of non-linear equations are enough to solve for many problems arising in applications. And you will see that the linearization method is a very, very efficient method. So these non-linear problems which arise in nature, they are converted into linear problems, but the linear problems amount to solving a system of linear equations. And then we have to understand the qualitative nature of the system of linear equations before we start computing the solutions. So methods of computations, there are many methods of computations. We have learned the Gauss elimination method, but there are many variations on these which are more efficient if I know the coefficient matrix. Yeah. So the Gauss elimination method works on any matrix. Okay. But if I know the structure of the matrix, then there are better methods for solving system of linear equations. But now in this chapter, we study basics of vector space theory, and we will see that it gives better insight into the nature of a coefficient matrix and the nature of solutions of given system of linear equations. Yeah. So the equation Ax equal to B, where x is consisting of n indeterminates. As I said, it can be viewed in this way, that Ax is really the linear combination of the column vectors of A. Think about Ax as x1 times first column vector plus x2 times second column vector plus xn times last column vector, and that is equal to B. So it says that the given system Ax equal to B, okay, it has solutions if and only if B is a linear combination of the column vectors. Otherwise, it will have no solution. So the left-hand side of this equation is indicating that we should actually look at all possible linear combinations of given set of column vectors. So the system of linear equations give rise to matrix equation Ax equal to B, and the given matrix has the n column vectors. Yeah, the n column vectors, and to see whether there is a solution, okay, we look at the space of all linear combinations of n column vectors. So xi's are indeterminates. So I will give different values to xi's, okay, and get all possible linear combinations of ai's. That is certain space, okay, and the solubility of Ax equal to B says that the vector B lies in that space, okay. So this is AI is the ith column vector, and the left-hand side is varying over linear combinations of all the column vectors of A. This gives rise to the idea of vector spaces. Okay. So to say that Ax equal to B has a solution is equivalent to the statement that B is a linear combination of column vectors of A, and we shall now look at the spaces of linear combination of vectors for a deeper understanding of system of linear equations and matrices. Yeah. So we will define the fundamental notion in linear algebra, that of a vector space. And you have seen vector spaces already in calculus. And the vector space that you saw in calculus was Rn. Yeah? And so points are in Rn, and we calculate many multivariate functions at points of Rn. But Rn can be thought of as the space of linear combinations of n column vectors, which are the basic column vectors. Yeah, right. Rn is simply the set of all linear combination of basic column vectors, where xi's are some real numbers. Okay. Yeah. So to solve the matrix equation, we are also looking at linear combination of column vectors of A. But if we take the basic column vectors E1 up to En, then this set of all possible linear combination is nothing but our usual n-dimensional space Rn. We will define dimension a little later, but you understand intuitively what is the dimension. Dimension of R2 is 2, dimension of R is 1, R3 is the three-dimensional usual three-dimensional space in which we live, but we will make the notion of dimension precisely. This is one of the purposes of introducing vector spaces, that we want to capture the notion of dimension precisely algebraically in terms of linear combinations. Okay. So non-empty set of objects, this is the definition of vector space, A non-empty set of objects called elements or vectors is called a vector space over the scalars F. The scalars could be the set of real numbers, or they could be set of complex numbers, or they could be set of the rational numbers. Okay? So we are dealing with these three fields. In applications, there are analogs of these fields which consist of finitely many numbers. For example, in computer science, we deal with binary system. So the set consisting of 0 and 1 is also a field, and it can take place of R or C. We can do all the linear algebra over the binary system of real numbers. Yeah, and that's what is happening in actual computer program. All information is converted to zeros and ones, and we are doing arithmetic modulo 2. Doing arithmetical modulo 2 is really doing vector space theory over the field of scalars, which is consisting of two elements. So linear algebra can be done over a variety of fields, field of real numbers, field of complex numbers, or finite fields like the binary system of numbers 0 and 1. There are similar binary systems, similar systems of numbers which have prime number of elements. So these are called integers modulo P. Okay. So much of linear algebra that we do in this course is actually applicable to a set of scalars which are either field of real numbers or complex numbers or a finite field. Okay. So a non-empty set of objects whose elements will be called as elements or vectors, although they may not look like vectors, is called a vector space if this list of axioms are satisfied. So there are 10 axioms for a vector space. Don't be scared of the number of axioms because you have seen all of them before. Since high school time, you have actually seen these axioms. But now we are putting all of them together to make a algebraic object called a vector space. Okay? So first set of axioms are called the closure axioms. So closure axioms, the closure axioms are for every pair of elements x and y in V. So elements of V we are calling as elements or vectors. Yeah, both the terms are used. So to take two vectors, then there's a unique vector called x plus y. This is called the sum. So in the definition of vector space, we are not specifying how we are going to add the vectors. If it is Rn, we know how we are adding. We are adding vectors component-wise. But in definition of abstract vector space, we are not specifying how we add the vectors. What is important is the properties of this addition. Okay. So repeatedly we use these properties, and these properties are satisfied in many cases. So we abstract them in terms of axioms. So these are the closure axioms. The first closure axiom that deals with addition of vectors. Okay. So for every pair, there is x and y in V. There is a unique vector called x plus y. Okay. And for every x in V and for every scalar, there is a unique element alpha times x. This is called the scaled. We are scaling the vector by alpha. Alpha is a scalar. It can be real number, it can be complex number, it can vary over the finite field. But when we define a vector space, we fix our set of scalars. Okay. So F is that set of scalars. And the second closure property says that for every alpha and for every x, there is a unique vector which is written as alpha times x. This is called the product of alpha and x. We are not specifying how we are arriving at alpha times x, but we are specifying that this is called scalar multiplication. The first operation is called the addition. So we have these two operations in a vector space. These two operations satisfy certain axioms. These are the axioms. Axioms for vector addition. Yeah? There are 4 axioms for vector addition. First is that vector addition is commutative. The second is that the vector addition is associative. Then there is a 0 element for addition of vectors. X plus 0 equal to 0 plus x equal to x for all x. The fourth axiom says that for every x, there is a negative of x, so that when you add the negative of x to x, I get the 0 vector. Okay. So these 4 properties you are familiar in the n-dimensional vector space, namely Rn. Okay, so elements of Rn are column vectors or row vectors, and we have component-wise addition, and we have component-wise scalar multiplication. And these two operations in Rn, they satisfy the four axioms for vector addition. Okay? These four are also true for real numbers. These are extracted, these four properties are extracted from the set of real numbers. In real numbers, we have addition and we have multiplication. So ignore the multiplication for the time being. Then just look at the addition of real numbers. Then these four properties, that is commutativity, associativity, existence of zero element, and existence of minus x. Minus x is called the additive inverse of x. When you add the additive inverse of x to x, I get the zero vector. Okay, so these four axioms, they are stated in this sequence. The sequence is very important. Yeah. So I have to first introduce this zero element so that I can talk about additive inverse, because additive inverse involves the zero element. Then these are two structural properties, that addition is commutative, addition is associative. So these are the four axioms for vector addition. Then we have similar axioms for scalar multiplication. So first is the associativity, alpha times beta x is alpha beta times x. This is the scalar product of scalar and a vector. Yeah, x is a vector and alpha beta are scalars. Then alpha times beta x is same as alpha beta times x. These are obvious for this usual space in which we operate. These are obvious because multiplication of real numbers is associative operation, but that translates into this axiom for scalar multiplication, associativity of scalar multiplication. Then scalar, so we have these two operations, addition and scalar multiplication, they interact with each other. So scalar multiple of alpha x plus y is the sum of alpha x and alpha y. Whether you first add the vectors, then take the scaled version, that is same as scaling the two vectors simultaneously and then adding them. Then existence of identity. So one is a scalar. Yeah, the scalars are either real numbers or complex numbers or a finite field. Then the multiplicative identity is there in those fields. So take one, which is a scalar, times any vector, and that is equal to x. We have to specify that 1 times x is x. Okay. Distributive law of addition. So add these scalars. Here we added the vectors and multiplied by a scalar. Here we are adding the scalars and multiplying by a vector. I get alpha x plus beta x. Okay. So these are four axioms for scalar multiplication and four axioms for vector addition. Okay. Yeah. So any set of vectors with these two operations of addition of vectors and scalar multiplication which satisfies these 8 axioms is called a vector space. When f is equal to r, we say V is a real vector space. If f equal to c, then V is called a complex vector space. Okay. So we will come across real vector spaces and complex vector spaces. Even in applications, we have to understand the complex vector spaces. Although in practice we deal with real numbers very often, but in fields like electrical engineering, you will see that complex numbers are used very often. So, and in computer science, finite fields are used very often. So, as the field of scalars is varying, the nomenclature for vector space also varies. So, real vector space when the field of scalars is real numbers, complex vector space when the field of scalars is complex numbers. Yeah. Okay. So let's look at some, examples. There are numerous examples of vector space. The concept of vector space came out after a long time because many sets of vectors or functions or matrices, they behave like vector spaces. They behave like Rn. Okay. So seemingly different objects, they form vector spaces. So let us look at that. Yeah. So take the set of real numbers. V is set of real numbers. The field of scalars is also real numbers with ordinary addition and multiplication as vector addition and scalar multiplication. This gives a real vector space. So the field of real numbers is a real vector space. Yeah, all those 8 axioms are satisfied for addition of real numbers and multiplication of real numbers. We can look at the field of complex numbers and the vector space, which is again the field of complex numbers. So with ordinary addition and multiplication as vector addition, scalar multiplication, this gives a complex vector space. This is a twist. we restrict the field of scalars. Take the vector space of complex numbers, but the scalars are real. Then and it satisfies all the 8 axioms: addition and scalar multiplication of complex numbers satisfies all the 8 axioms. So the field of complex numbers becomes a vector space of real, and it can also be considered as a vector space of over the complexes itself. These two vector spaces have different structure. Okay? Yeah, this is our usual space, Rn, Euclidean space, consisting of either the row vectors for addition and multiplication, which I described, how to add row vectors and column vectors, how to multiply a row vector by a scalar or a column vector by a scalar. So if you think of row vectors of length n, they form this n-dimensional real vector space. Similarly, we define the real vector space of real column vectors. Okay? Real column vectors. And depending on the context, Rn can be the vector space of row vectors or column vectors with n real components. So the context will tell you whether Rn is representing the vector space of row vectors or vector space of column vectors. Okay, the same notation will be used. If you want to be really fussy, then this is the space of column vectors with n components, and this is the space of row vectors with n components. But we just write both of them as Rn, and the context will make it clear whether we are looking at row vectors or column vectors.